Some Sacramentans feel the measure that they passed last year to crack down on homeless encampments is like a false bill of goods, and think a new part of the measure that just went into effect is shockingly ineffective. So here's Becca Hotbecker with tonight's main point.
Yeah, Alex, as I reported here on To The Point on Wednesday, a much anticipated part of Measure O just went into effect. It's a form that allows Sacramento residents to report unlawful camping on public property. Now, Measure O says the city is required to respond to these reports within 20 days. But the city is saying they've thrown enough money at the measure and their job is done.
There's violations of people blocking the street.
John Morales lives in East Sacramento's McKinley Village and says he's sick of the problems that come with unlawful encampments in his neighborhood.
There are dozens of needles that are close by where the children play, and people use the streets as a restroom.
On Wednesday, this form went live, allowing Sacramentans to report unlawful camping. Specifically, Measure O says residents will be authorized to commence proceedings to require the city to abate the violations. Then, within 20 days, Measure O says the city is required to respond.
I went online immediately. I filed those 3 complaints, and half an hour later, I got a response from the city saying that they have already spent the maximum amount to enforce Measure O, and therefore they are not going to hire even a hearing examiner to take a look at what my complaint was.
Wait. What? The city directed us to the Measure O FAQ page where it says the city has allocated more than the maximum $5 million required to fund the requirements of Measure O in the next budget. Therefore, the city has met its financial obligations for the next fiscal year and is not required to fund additional services, such as the hiring of a hearing examiner and other components of the notice and demand process, aka this new reporting system for Sacramentans.
Outrage wouldn't be the right word even. We are so mad.
Josh Wood helped craft Measure O and sell it to the public. He's CEO of the Sacramento Region Business Association. He says the city's determination that it does not have to fully implement the new reporting and enforcement system is flat out wrong.
They are standing on thin legal ground because they can't just point and say they fulfilled their obligation when people are dying in Sacramento and our streets look like a dystopian movie.
For its part, the city says in addition to state dollars, it's spending $16 million from its own general fund to meet the obligations of Measure O, including creating and maintaining emergency shelter spaces, performing outreach to persons experiencing homelessness, and developing a coordinated access system. But as for this enforcement tool, the city says it doesn't have to follow through.
Now, the city says when you do submit that form, it will get routed to the Department of Community Response, which deploys social workers and outreach specialists. But that is different than what Measure O lays out. The city maintains, though, it is following its, the Measure O.
And how does that really differ?
Sure. So, Measure O includes an appeals process and a hearing examiner. It says if the city manager refuses or fails to fix the violation, the resident can appeal that, which then would go to a hearing examiner. Well, that position currently sits vacant, and the city is saying it doesn't have to hire for that role or enforce Measure O because it has spent enough money, and that fulfills its obligation. And we should point out here, 70,000 people voted yes for Measure O in November. So this is why we're really trying to dig into why this is all happening.
All right, Becca, thank you so much. We appreciate it.